My name is Marco DeSantis. I work in the Vatican gardens, trimming hedges, sweeping paths, tending the flowers that line the grand courtyards. It's not a glamorous job. No tourists ask for my photo. No cameras follow me. I move in the background, unnoticed. But on March 29th, 2025, I witnessed something so profound, so quiet, so filled with the breath of heaven. It changed me forever. It was the day the world came to bury Pope Francis, and the day when, in a hidden side chapel, two of the world's most hardened leaders met, not as enemies, but as men. It rained softly that morning, like heaven itself was weeping. I stood tucked beneath one of the marble colonnades, rosary tight in my hand, as thousands, maybe millions, pressed into St. Peter's Square. Pilgrims, presidents, priests, refugees, children clutching damn paper signs that read, "Grazie, Papa Francesco." The bells tolled, slow and aching. The air smelled of rain, incense, and old stone. It felt as if the very earth was holding its breath. When the casket came into view, simple wood, no gold, no jewels, just a cross burned into its surface, a wave of emotion swept the crowd. Some knelt, some wept openly, some simply stood, unable to move, their grief too big for their bodies. I was one of them. In the front rows, under the eternal gaze of saints carved into stone, sat the powerful of the earth, kings, ambassadors, prime ministers, and two figures the cameras could not stop flashing toward. Donald Trump, stern, distant, eyes heavy. Volodymyr Zelensky, rigid, fatigued, yet dignified. They didn't speak. They didn't smile. The distance between them could have been miles. But Pope Francis had spent his life telling us, true peace does not come when power shakes hands with power. It comes when hearts recognize hearts. And in that grand cathedral of history, something unseen began to stir. The funeral mass rolled forward, Latin prayers rising like smoke, hymns in ancient tongues echoing against marble domes. I watched as Trump and Zelensky both lowered their heads, each lost in his own battle. And then a glance, just a moment, not a calculation, not a politics, weariness, grief, a shared burden too big for any one man to carry. I felt it. The air around me changed, as if angels leaned closer, whispering, "Watch carefully. Something is beginning." When the final blessing was spoken and the wooden casket was slowly lifted to begin its final procession through St. Peter's Basilica, the crowd, unexpectedly, spontaneously, burst into applause. Not cheers. Applause for a life spent breaking barriers. As the applause faded into sacred silence, I saw Trump and Zelensky stand. And without ceremony, without aids, they both turned, not toward the exits, but toward the side of the basilica where a small, almost forgotten chapel waited. I don't know why I followed. Something stronger than curiosity pulled my feet. And what I saw next, I will never forget. They stood in a small side chapel where a single crucifix hung on the wall. Christ, arms open wide, face twisted in sacrifice. There were no cameras, no advisors, no speeches, only two men, one a symbol of might, the other a symbol of struggle, and standing between them, grief, humility, the fragile chance of peace. I watched from a respectful distance, hidden by a column. I saw their faces soften. I saw shoulders lower. I saw humanity's surface where only headlines had existed before. They spoke. I couldn't hear every word, but I didn't need to. Their faces said everything. Walls were falling. Hearts were speaking. It wasn't a treaty. It wasn't politics. It was something holier than that. It was mercy. Try and plant a seed. I remembered then a speech Pope Francis had given years ago. Reconciliation begins when we stop seeing each other as threats and start seeing each other as sons. There, under the shadow of the crucified Christ, the legacy of Francis breathed one more time. Maybe for just a second, maybe only a flicker, but hope was planted. When their conversation ended, there was no grand handshake for cameras, no dramatic pronouncements, no stage photos. Trump and Zelensky simply nodded at each other, slow, heavy, meaningful. Then each man walked a separate way, one to the left aisle, the other to the right, disappearing into the streams of aides, guards, and mourners flooding St. Peter's Basilica. To the world, they had come and gone like any other dignitaries. But I knew history had shifted, and almost no one noticed. Outside, the crowds mourned. Journalists typed up headlines about Pope Francis's funeral. News anchors debated who might become the next pope. Politicians calculated their next moves. The world moved on, but in the spirit, something remained. It was as if a seed had been buried in the soil of human history, invisible for now, but destined to crack open in time. People might argue for years about policies, treaties, or who said what behind closed doors. That's not what I saw. I saw two men, two warriors of opposing worlds, drop their swords for a moment at the foot of the cross. I saw grief melt pride. I saw hope weaken hate. I saw mercy slip into a room where only power once lived. And it wasn't Pope Francis's fame that made it happen. It was his spirit, a spirit that said, if you want to change the world, start by changing the way you see your enemy. The next day, I went back to trimming hedges and sweeping courtyards. To everyone else, it was an ordinary day, but inside, I was burning with what I had witnessed. Every time my broom scratched the cobblestones, every time a tourist brushed past without seeing me, I whispered a prayer. Let them see, Lord. Let them see how close you are. Because I realized the greatest battles are not fought on stages. The greatest victories are not won with armies. The greatest revolutions begin in small, unseen acts of mercy. Pope Francis once said, the world will not be saved by the perfect, but by the merciful. I believe with all my heart that at his funeral, in a hidden corner of the world's grandest church, two imperfect men answered the whisper of that prophecy. Maybe they didn't even realize it. Maybe it was just a flicker. But heaven knew. As I raked fallen leaves under the colonnades, I thought about the rest of us. You and me, the ones who aren't presidents, the ones who don't sit in marble palaces, the ones who sweep and build and teach and struggle unseen. We are not powerless. If hearts can soften in a side chapel between two rivals, then Maybe we can forgive the neighbor who hurt us. Maybe we can reach across a silent table and start again. Maybe we can love the one we don't understand. Maybe the real prophecy isn't waiting in governments or speeches. Maybe it's waiting in us. I thought that the most important things in the world happen on stages. But now I know the most important things happen where no one sees. In glances, in forgiveness, in small, secret mercies that change everything. If you're carrying bitterness today, if you're tired of hatred, if you wonder if hope still matters, remember, history bends when hearts bend. Peace begins in moments no one will ever write down. And mercy, true mercy, is a revolution heaven watches for. If this story stirred something in your heart, don't ignore it. Like and share this video with someone who needs hope more than headlines. Comment below if you're praying for peace in your life or in the world. I'll read every single name. Subscribe for more true stories that reveal how God is moving behind the scenes. And remember, you don't need a podium. You don't need power. You don't need permission. You just need a willing heart. Because real history is written when mercy moves